In the 1990s, there were plenty of sport truck offerings to choose from. The F-150 Lightning, the 454 SS, the Cyclone, the Ram SST, the Dakota RT, S10 Cameo, Sonoma GT, and I'm sure there's a few I'm forgetting. Before the 90s, performance trucks were practically non-existent. Yes, there was the Dodge Little Red Express, Ford Ranger GT, Shelby Dakota, but they were all unpopular and limited. Trucks were meant for work and not performance. Come the 90s, automakers started experimenting more, and today we see plenty of performance-focused trucks. Performance SUVs, on the other hand, was a different story. The SUV was starting to become popular around this time, apart from a few exceptions in the 80s, but the performance SUV segment was untouched. 1992 rolls around, the Typhoon is introduced, but can you think of any other performance SUV from the 90s? Creating this list wasn't easy. It actually took me a few hours to come up with, and it is by far from perfect. And to be 100% transparent, most entries aren't exactly fast by today's standards. However, for the time, most of the models I found were exceptional and you hardly hear anything about them. With that said, here are the top 10 forgotten performance SUVs from the 1990s in no particular order. Our first entry is the GMC Yukon GT, offered from 1993 to 1997. The Yukon replaced the Jimmy in 92 or was a revised version, whichever you prefer. The Chevy counterpart was the Blazer, which evolved into the two-door Tahoe a few years later. The Yukon GT wasn't really anything to write home about, and so I will be quick with this entry. With it, you got 16-inch alloy wheels, color-matched front and rear bumpers, a Yukon GT badges on the side, a 5-speed came standard, optional bucket seats, and that's pretty much it. They all came standard with Goodyear Wrangler tires, 4-wheel drive, and GM's 5.7. 92 to 95 models made 200 horsepower and 310 pound-feet of torque. 96 and 97 models made 255 horsepower and 335 pound-feet of torque thanks to the Vortec 5.7. No special engine tuning or suspension upgrades like the Typhoon, but I still think they're cool and you definitely don't see these around anymore. Our next entry is the Ford Bronco Night Edition, and it's kind of the same story with the Yukon GT. And again, I'll try to be quick with it, but I wanted to showcase it right after the Yukon as these were direct competitors. The Night Edition was only available from 1991 to 1992, which means the last year of the 4th gens and the first year for the 5th gens. A few thousand of these Night Edition Broncos were made, and with it you got a few changes over the other trims. They only came in black. They featured 15-inch aluminum wheels, white letter tires, blacked out grille, roof racks in front and rear bumpers, sports suspension, and a gradient blue, purple, or pink stripe along the side. The interior got a few additional touches as well. It could be had in 2-wheel or 4-wheel drive, and they came standard with a V8. Either the 302 5-liter or 351 5.8, the 5.8 made 203 horsepower and 300 pound-feet of torque. The F-150s also received this package. For 91, it was limited to the regular cab, then come 92, you could have it in any style. If you ask me, I'd rather have the Yukon GT over this Bronco Night Edition. Up next is the first-gen Mercedes ML55 AMG. So technically these debuted in February of 1999 for the 2000 model year, but this first generation ML was introduced in 98. This is what I was talking about with this list not being perfect, and I have timestamps in the description for each entry if you want to skip over. Luxury SUVs were on the come up during this time with the Navigator, Escalade, and X5. The first generation Escalade debuted in 98 as well, and it is still one of my favorite generations. To combine luxury and performance in an SUV was unheard of, and these ML55 AMGs were just that. Under the hood was a 5.5-liter V8, good for 342 horsepower and 376 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds. Because these engines are naturally aspirated with no forced induction, they are fairly reliable for a Mercedes around this time. It being an AMG, you got unique hood bulges, 18-inch wheels, fender flares, dual exhaust, AMG badges, and red brake calipers. Additionally, they featured stiffened dampers, front torsion bars, increased stiffness of the valve springs, and used lighter camshafts. My problem with these is the looks. The proportions seem bulky to me. It has a higher roofline and a short hood, but that's besides the point. These were very fast SUVs for the time, and there wasn't much competition. Our next entry is a two-parter with the Dodge Durango SP360 and RT. These first-gen Durangos were introduced in 1998, body-on-frame, 3-row, truck-based SUVs. Carroll Shelby took notice of the Durango and came up with a version of his own. Under the hood was that 5.9 Magnum V8, but added was a supercharger. In terms of power, these made 360 horsepower and 412 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60 in 6.7 seconds. The name SP360 comes from SP standing for Super Pursuit and 360 coming from its horsepower rating. They came with upgraded suspension, race-inspired brake system, two-tone racing stripes, body kit, twin intake composite hood, 17-inch chrome wheels, dual exhaust, and a few interior touches. They planned to make 3,000 of these, but only 10% would actually be produced. These were super bold, and again, performance SUVs were just starting to become something, and so it makes sense why these didn't sell. The Durango RT came out a year later in 2000. They made 250 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque without that supercharger. Definitely less aggressive, but still these tapped in that performance SUV market. 17-inch alloy wheels, free-flowing exhaust with chrome tip, fatter tires, revalved shock absorbers, body-colored trim, and a luxurious interior. While these came out in 2000, the body style screams the late 90s. 2004 was the next generation, and to me, those Durangos come to mind when I think 2000s. This video is all over the place, and our next entry completely supports that. I'm referring to the Chevy Astro RS and Safari GT. These are vans and not SUVs, but I don't see any other possibility of including them in another list video, and I really wanted to shed some light on them. The first-gen twins were introduced in 1985 and would live on until 1994. There were two different lengths, either STD or EXT, with a difference of a whopping 10 inches. STD would probably not be used to indicate anything for a car in 2025. 1990 introduced an all-wheel drive system, making these the first American vans to have. I remember the Aerostar also having an all-wheel drive system, and it too was released in 1990, but I guess a few months behind. Also available in 1990 was the RS and GT packages for these vans. As for the exterior, it included a front air dam, integrated fog lamps, color-matched front and rear bumpers, black window louvers, and unique striping on the grille. Mechanically speaking, they got quicker ratio steering, rear anti-sway bars, sports tuned suspension, the high output version of the 4.3 V6, and a sports steering wheel. And so while these are vans and not SUVs, I bet you don't remember them unless you somehow own one, which is very unlikely. The first gen RAV4 came out in 94, and come 98, there was a 3-door soft top option available. Now, just hear me out. I know this is classified as a crossover, and I'm really reaching with this one, but I'll be very quick. From 1998 to 2000, these could be optioned with a 5-speed manual, all-wheel drive, and a removable soft top. These were very light, they had full independent suspension, and a short wheelbase. From what I've heard, these were nimble, had tight handling, and are very fun to drive. That's all I wanted to say. On to our next entry. 1998 to 2001 Ford Saleen XP8. Saleen is a tuning company best known for modifying Mustangs around this time, and for some reason they wanted to modify the Explorer. Specifically, the second-gen Explorers introduced in 1995. Just like the Shelby Dakota, these visually had some extensive modifications done. We're talking a rear wing, large rear bumper, magnesium wheels, which is something you'd see on a supercar, side claddings, carbon composite hood, air dam, and Saleen graphics. They could be had in either all-wheel drive or two-wheel, and some received a supercharger under the hood. I say some because a few examples came with that stock 5.0, 222 horsepower, and 298 pound-feet of torque. Others had a Saleen supercharger slapped on, boosting power to 286 horsepower and 333 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 in the Saleen XP8 was in around 7.4 seconds, which is slower than the Shelby Dakota by a few tenths of a second. I'm going to have a poll in the post tab, the former community section, for you guys to vote on which you'd rather have. And for comparison's sake, we'll include the supercharged variant. Apparently, there was even an Explorer XP6. These had that 4-liter V6, and these were never supposed to be produced. Saleen ordered a batch of 98 Explorers to convert into XP8 models, but some 6-cylinder XLT models were accidentally thrown in. Instead of losing time and money sending them back, they went ahead and converted them anyway. Visually, they are identical, but performance-wise, very lackluster and misleading. Only around 10 of these were made, and for the XP8 models, around 300 units were produced, just like the Durango SP360. Next is the Jeep Grand Cherokee 5.9 Limited. These first-gen Grand Cherokees were introduced back in '93, and for its final year, a new trim was released. I should point out that a year prior, there was this TSI package offered for 2 years. When I think TSI, I think of the Eagle Talon and Vision. TSI was this top-notch sport trim, and it was available for the ZJ. They featured a body-colored grille, unique 16-inch wheels, fog lights, and a blue pinstripe. The 5.9 Limited, on the other hand, offered a lot more. For one, they had that 5.9 Magnum V8 seen on the Dakota RT and Durango RT. Those TSIs had the 5.2. Power-wise, the Limited made 245 horsepower and 345 pound-feet of torque, 0 to 60 in 6.8 seconds, which means it was on par with the Mustang GTs of its era. On top of that, they featured a mesh grille, hood louvers, curved rockers, chrome exhaust tip, colored match grille, and limited rear slip diff. These were essentially the SRT8s and Trackhawks of the time, and they continue to be one of my favorite SUVs from the 90s. Our second to last entry goes to the 1999 Range Rover Callaway, the first high-performance oriented Range Rover. A lot was done mechanically compared to the regular Range Rover. The 4.6 featured a higher compression ratio, valve seats and valve guides were modified, changes were done to the intake manifold, ram air intake, and throttle plate. Additionally, the exhaust featured a dual exhaust system, which at this point was new to the Range Rover. In terms of power, they made 10% more than base Range Rovers, or 240 horsepower and 285 pound-feet of torque. 0 to 60 in 8.6 seconds, a whole second slower than the 5.9 Limited offered a year before. As for the exterior, they had color-matched bumpers, grills, and mirrors, dual exhaust, Callaway badges, and unique wheels. I've always liked the look of these second-gen Range Rovers, but good luck finding a Callaway as only 220 examples were made. Last, but certainly not least, is the Tahoe Limited, only available for the 2000 model year. It's still a first-gen and not on the GMT 800 platform that came out a year later, and so I feel like it's okay to include. I mean, one of the entries was a RAV4 convertible, probably the most polarizing entry to be featured. The story goes that GM wanted to offer a Tahoe SS package, but because of insurance purposes, they went with Limited instead. Around 7,500 units were produced, and they were only offered for the 2000 model year, just like the Z71 Tahoe. This was to be a collector's item, and so only one unit was to be sold for every 3 dealerships nationwide. The Limited package was offered exclusively for 4-door, 2-wheel drive models, and with it you got some nice upgrades. Mechanically speaking, they received an engine oil cooler, increased cooling capacity, Z57 suspension and performance package, something that only police and law enforcement models had, Bilstein shocks, front and rear sway bars, and anti-lock brakes. Under the hood was that Vortec 5.7, good for 255 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque. The engine was also tweaked to reach over 130 miles per hour. As for the exterior, they had color-matched front and rear bumpers, special ground effects, integrated bumper fog lights, and limited badging. And that will conclude the top 10 forgotten performance SUVs from the 1990s. If I happen to forget any, please feel free to drop a comment letting me know which ones. And if you're wondering where the Blazer Extreme is, I featured it in my forgotten performance SUVs from the 2000s video. I can't believe that we hit 50,000 subscribers. That was a huge milestone for me, and I'm very proud and thankful. That is going to wrap it up for this week's video. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will try and see you all next week.